Yo guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm back with another Psgl League race. Today is round number 10 at the Canadian Grand Prix, the fourth last race of the season, and the battle is well and truly on between myself and Mr. Stim. We're on board with myself for my Canada qualifying lap, which I was actually quite happy with, but it wasn't the quickest lap, spoiler alert. Yeah, just in general, I struggled with one lap pace around this track. Race pace, I was decent, but one lap pace, I just was not quick. And this track is incredibly easy to corner cut, so I had to be really cautious just to get a lap in. This is my first run on the ultra soft tyre, and it was actually my quickest because I set a banker lap on the ultra soft tyre, where I'm sort of pushing, and then I try and push the boundaries on my other set of ultra softs, and I just cut the corners. So this was my quickest lap. Unfortunately, it wasn't the quickest. But come around the final chicane, that's actually quite a nice line through it. I was a little bit cautious, but overall it was a nice line. Come up to the line, and it's going to be a 1:13.0. I was actually quite happy with, but unfortunately it does put us in third place. Mr. Tim takes pole position with Ranger in second, and we start on the second row of the grid. But I was actually quite happy with that. I didn't mind starting in third because I did have the inside line for turn 1. So if I could just get a decent start, I might be able to take Ranger into the first corner. However, Mr. Stim is my championship rival, so I really need to beat him this race, and it's quite close. It will go down to the final race by the looks of it, if I can keep up the performance I've had in the past few races. But we're lining up on the grid now to start the race. It's going to be interesting. I knew Mr. Sim and Ranger were going to do a 2-stop, and I was going to stick to a 1-stop because my tyre seems to be quite good in this game. But without further ado, it's race time. So we have 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights. And it's lights out and away we go, and the start is actually very decent. Ranger not getting off the grid round, neither does Mr. Stim. Ranger's going to have it running outside of turn 1 around Mr. Stim. We have a look up the inside into turn 1 on Ranger, trying to hard on the outside turn 2, we run just a bit wide, and he holds on to second place for now. No changes in the top 6, I think. But for the first time since my debut race in Belgium, Mr. Stim is ahead of me in the race after turn 1, which was actually a weird fact that I actually found out after this race. But in the opening stages of this race, it's looking like I'm going to have to fight for this race win. However, coming on to lap 2, we're staying with Ranger. We've just got a slipstream and DRS. He's got a slipstream with Mr. Stim. But we get caught on the curb on the final corner, which drags us to the right, and Carwell goes up or inside on the exit. He's on the super soft tyre, so he could jump all of us if he gets his strategy right. We're trying to hard on the outside turn 1 round Carwell, but we have to concede, and he takes third place. Hopefully he won't hold us up too much. Hopefully he can catch the cars ahead and slow them down a bit. But you can see in Sector 1, I don't know what he was doing. It's a horrendous corner cut from him, but he was really holding me up in Sector 1. So I kind of wanted him to get out of the way. He was ruining my race. Before he overtook me, I was able to stay with Ranger and just stay in the slipstream, but once he got past me, he just ruined my momentum. We're coming up to the hairpin now. Carworld still holding us up, but you can see Ranger actually goes very deep into the hairpin, which ruins his momentum, and I'm not really sure what happened. I don't know if he just missed his braking point or there was contact with Stim. Stim didn't look too affected, but Ranger still ahead of us. We're in the slipstream of Carwold now. We go to the outside of the final corner. Luckily he pulls out of it. I think he knows not to go side by side through the chicane. Taking the chicane nicely, and we're back up in the third place. Now can we chase down Ranger and Stim? They're battling for the lead, so we might be able to close the gap if they continue going side by side, especially around this track. And I knew these guys' tyre wear was worse than mine, so I knew I'd have better tyres during the end of their stint. So I had to push as hard as I could, just trying to catch them. Coming on to lap number 5, we've managed to get back into the slipstream of Ranger, and we're staying with him. But we were very, very late on the brakes. I don't know what happened, I just missed my braking point. We won wide, Carl gets back past us, we pick up a 3-second penalty. And throughout this race, I just really struggled with the final corner. I knew in general I was struggling with, or going to struggle with corner cutting this race. But the final corner just proved to be an absolute bitch during the entirety of this race. So we're back down to 4th position. And it's looking like the top 2 are pulling away with the 3rd and 4th battling. So this isn't what I wanted. I just wanted to stay with 2nd. At least I knew they were doing a 2-stop, so if I could just get the overcut on them, I just needed to stay as close to them as possible. We're coming on to lap number 8. Carwood has got past Ranger, and Ranger seems to be really struggling. I think he's going to appear at the end of this lap. We pick up yet another penalty at the first chicane this time, which again was another disgusting corner. And you can see Ranger is just really struggling on the tyres and holding me up, which is really frustrating because the only place I was really confident overtaking was down the straight, because I didn't want to dive bomb anyone, especially at this track where it's just chicane after chicane, so you can't really just dive bomb someone. So Ranger was really holding me up in the first and second sector. We're in the slipstream now, heading down to the hairpin. He was lagging quite a bit, which was why I go out of the slipstream. You can see he's lagging, going back and forth, so I was just praying that he didn't take me out. We're coming around the hairpin now. We're going to have DRS and slipstream, but I'm pretty sure, judging by just how much he's struggling, he is going to come into the pit at the end of this lap. He's going to give us the toe down the straight, and hopefully it's close up like maybe a tenth to Stim. Just find any time we can. You see, coming down to the final corner, he does pull into the pit, and that's going to promote us to P3. So I kind of knew that around this time Stim was going to be pitting, so I just had to push as hard as I can, just minimise the effect. And Carwold has got past Stim and is holding him up by the looks of it. They're battling. So I saw the opportunity to push and really close the gap to Stim. Coming to the hairpin now at the end of lap 9, you can see just how much time Stim has lost, and Carwold parking it on the hairpin, on the apex. A very questionable move from the Red Bull driver, but we get better traction than Stim, and we're going to go up his inside, heading down the main straight. We're going to have DRS on, I think it was Stim, I don't know how, I think we managed to get DRS on Stim. We make the move on our championship contender into second place, and we hit the wall. I don't really know what happened there, just a lost concentration. Stim pulls into the pit at the end of lap 9, so now it's time to push. I kind of wanted to get these tyres to at least lap 13, maybe 12, because I had been battling with Carwold. And on to lap 12 now, we're sitting behind Carwold. He hits the grass and goes wide at the hairpin. I don't know if he let me through or not, but I don't know. Carwold had some questionable decisions during this race. We make the move for the lead of the race, and I think we're going to come into the pit at the end of this lap. Go onto the soft tyre, and I was pretty confident I could make it to the end. The soft tyre just lasts so long around this track. Very cautious coming into the pit, did not want a drive-through penalty. We had enough penalties already. But coming into the pit, we're going to fit the soft tyre and go to the end. I wasn't sure if Stim was going for a one-stop. I knew the softs could last a very long time, but I obviously didn't know what his tyre was like. You can see Ranger and Stim already at turn 2 and are quite far ahead of me. So I just had to try and push on the soft tyre and close the gap as much as I can, and hopefully just not get any more penalties during this race. But coming on to lap 14 now, it's not a corner cut, but we come around the final chicane, and Carwold has come into the pit, as well as, now I want to try and say this right, I said it wrong last time, it's not Frisco, it's Psgl. I got told how to say it in the chat, but I've already forgotten, so apologies if I said it wrong again. I think it's Psgl. I'm sure you'll correct me again. We move into third place, and now we are trying to chase down the top 2. I was sure they had to make another pit stop. And on to lap 20 now. We have really been pushing, coming into the first chicane. You guessed it, it's another penalty, and that is 9 seconds now. So that's really pushing our luck with the penalties, and it's looking unlikely we're going to win this race. But I knew it was easy to cut the corners here, so I wasn't giving up. I knew the top 2, I mean, especially Mr. Stim in Japan, had a lot of corner cutting penalties. As we come on to lap 27 now, just continuously pushing, trying to catch these guys. Mr. Stim has come into the pit first, so he has lost. I think he was in second place. Ranger stayed out, but he pitted a lap earlier than Stim. And on to the next lap, Ranger comes into the pit, so we inherit the lead of the race with just a couple laps to go. But obviously we have those penalties, so now it is time. They have gone onto the ultra soft tyres, so they're easily going to be the quickest cars on track. So it's just a matter of pushing as hard as I could and minimising the damage. I knew I could make it to the end. I didn't know how many penalties Mr. Stim had, and I didn't know how many penalties Ranger had. So, as far as I knew at this point, I was in lead of the race, and they had 9 seconds worth of penalties as well. But I had absolutely no clue. I was assuming they didn't have any penalties, or at least they had one penalty. So I was just pushing as hard as I could, just trying to get as far up the grid as possible. The top 3 were miles ahead of 4th place, so I was going to get onto the podium. But it's whether I was going to beat Mr. Stim. I mean, obviously I was trying to beat Ranger, but the priority was beating Mr. Stim in the championship. And just taking as many points away from him as possible. And I will say, this was the start of some of the most intense final laps I have ever raced on this game. And now the battle starts, crossing the line onto lap 31. The gap is 7.6 seconds to Ranger. And you'll see the gap tumbling down. I knew it was going to come down there on the fastest tyre. On to the next lap, crossing the line, and the gap, what is it now? The gap is down to 6.1 seconds. The traffic really wasn't helping here, but I was getting a little bit of DRS, as you can see. On to lap 33, and the gap is 4.8 seconds. On to lap 34. We've actually minimised the damage here, only lost half a second that lap. So their tyres are starting to wear slightly, which gave me a little bit of hope. Coming on to the final lap, the gap is down to 3.1 seconds. But coming on to the penultimate straight, you can see Ranger is right behind me. He's not going to finish ahead of me on track, but I don't know how many penalties he has. Is he going to win this race, or will we win it? Heading down to the final corner. He has been absolutely flying these ultra soft tyres, but he's not going to overtake me on track. Come around the final corner now. Who is going to win this race? We're going to come up to the line and we're going to finish first. But will we classify first? We cross the line, looking on the top left, and we lose the lead and the race win. Thanks to penalties, I really wasn't expecting to win that race. But here are the classifications. Ranger comes home finishing 5 seconds ahead of myself. He had a 3-second penalty, but we had more penalties, and that's where we lost it. Mr. Stim takes the final podium spot on 18 seconds worth of penalties. Kellon, for the second race in a row, finishes in 4th position with another fantastic performance from 11th position. Frisco comes home in 5th place, with Genetic taking 6th place, Daewoo in 7th, LFC for Life takes his only 2nd points finish of the season, Tim Air takes 9th, and Sochberg takes the final point at the Canadian Grand Prix. So here is the drivers' standings after round number 10 at Canada. We have 3 races left to go, next being USA. Mr. Stim leads on 83 points. We move into 2nd place on 60, 23 points behind him. There is no chance I am giving up now. I will fight to the end. No matter how small my chance is, I will fight. I mean, Stim had a poor race in Malaysia. I think he finished in, was it 6th position? You can see he only picked up 5 points on the table. So a race like that could happen anywhere. So this championship is not over for me. I will fight to the end. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, remember to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new on here. Thank you guys for watching, and see ya.